Lima says she can't make it because she's got an appointment. So let's get going.
Okay, I will start with the attendance when you are ready.
All right, go ahead.
I'm having trouble hearing the clerk. I can hear you fine, Jason. I can't hear the clerk.
Zaire, can you speak up?
Yes, is this better?
It's
A little bit, yeah. It's a little muffled.
Okay. I'll try to speak a little clearly. Chairman Knight.
Present.
Rep Lima. Rep Newberry.
Here.
Rep Speakman.
Present.
Chairwoman Williams.
Present.
Okay, we're all set, Chairman.
Okay, everybody. Welcome to House Oversight, the subcommittee on administrative efficiency for the premier inaugural meeting. And I'm so glad that you are all here with us, and I'm ready to get this show on the road. Today we are going to have a presentation from the Department of Administration. But before we do that, I just wanted to start with a couple of comments. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to Speaker Shikarchi for recognizing the need for some of these subcommittees on the oversight panel to dig in a little deeper about governmental operations. They're all just getting on their feet right now, but it's a good step forward for the House of Representatives. So, and I'm thankful to be asked to chair one of them. Secondly, I just wanted to lay out for those who are watching, this committee's goal will be to improve administrative efficiency by trying to find the pain points in Rhode Island government and developing solutions collaboratively to try to get past some of those pain points. We're going to dig deep into the daily operation of Rhode Island government so that the House is better informed about these operations, and we can develop insights to develop a more effective and targeted policy in our government agencies. And on the flip side of the coin, we hope that the agencies will use the committee to inform the House about problems in their operations and spotlight areas where the House and the Assembly can do better in supporting their operations. And I'm pleased to be doing this with my colleagues, Representative Brian Newberry, Representative June Speakman, Chairwoman Anastasia Williams, and although she's not here today because she had a conflict, Deputy Speaker Charlene Lima. And while we hear from Mr. Thorsen from the Department of Administration, I would say, I kind of like a free-flowing style. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand or give me the high sign, and we'll interrupt the presentation to maybe take a question or two. Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to say respectfully to the presenters of the department, while this is a free-flowing and we're trying to collaborate and understand the issues that they may be encountering or have encountered or foresee to encounter, I would hope that this is the first time, and first impressions are lasting. So while I am, the knowledge I have about the operation of the department, I'm going to put it to the side with the hopes that what you all are going to bring is going to be honest, clear, to the point. No sugarcoating, no protecting, and all that kind of stuff, because I want you all to feel comfortable enough to say what needs to be said, what has to be said, because if I decide to go and hunt for the truth, then, there's going to be issues. So I just hope and I ask that you all are going to be forthwith coming with the truth and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Chair, and I'm sure that I'm positive that we'll certainly get those answers in a collaborative fashion today and going forward. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention for folks who might be watching beyond this meeting out in Capitol TV land. We envision this subcommittee to be a rolling subcommittee, and that it will have meetings on a fairly regular basis throughout the year, even when the General Assembly is in recess. And our goal is to talk to the various agencies, not just the big ones like Department of Administration, but to burrow down and get at the DBRs of the world, or even agencies within agencies, so that we can really get a more nuanced understanding of operations in the state from the top level all the way down to what we used to call in the Navy, to the deck plate, right? To where most of our workers are, most of our processes are, all the customer service actions that happen there for the people of Rhode Island. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Jim Thorsen from the Department of Administration, who is the acting director, and you can take it away. Ryan, you're muted. There we go.
We good. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman Knight and members of the committee. It's my pleasure to present to you today. My name is Jim Thorsen, and I'm the Acting Director of Administration. I've got a brief presentation, and I'd like to take your questions today. And we have an agenda that includes an overview of the Department of Administration and its divisions, talking about our top priorities, and rounding out with our best practices, a statement on best practices. I hope this meeting sets a tone of collaboration. I understand where you're coming from, at least I'm sure I will by the time we're done today. And by way of background, I just want to let you know that I've spent nearly 40 years working with state and local government, both in government and in the private sector working with government. I had about 8.5 years of public finance investment banking before joining the state as deputy treasurer back in 1995, and spent a number of years working as deputy treasurer, working to issue the state's bonds, manage the state's cash, and the state's pension fund, each of which are 3 different functions now. Spent 16 years after that working with public pension plans while I was at an investment management company based in Boston, and then came back to work as a deputy director of Health Source Rhode Island, where I spent a couple of years helping to transition from a grant-based to a sustainable funding model. The last couple of years I worked with the U.S. Treasury on projects for developing countries, including Mongolia, Ecuador, and Vietnam. And recently came back in October to work at the Department of Revenue, and was asked to help here at DOA with the change of administrations. So with that introduction, what I want, before we get into the meat of the agenda, I just want to mention to you that pandemic management has dominated the agenda here, and will likely continue. I've had between 10 and 12 hours of meeting time per week working with OMB and the Pandemic Recovery Office, RIDO and RIEMA for logistics support, primarily related to funding and contracts and contract management, and getting sites set up for additional vaccinations. Communications with RIDO, RIDE, and DCAM, and making sure that we're coordinated. Working with the vaccine team, reviewing the vaccine progress from week to week, and also working on a small business grant program, which is in the governor's proposed budget. Just by way of notice, there was an announcement this morning that Jeremy Leach has left the Pandemic Recovery Office, and Dottie Pascal has assumed his role. And this is a group that meets 3 times a week to ensure that we are in compliance with the CARES Act and our contracts, and reviews contracts. So with that, what I'd like to do is move into the agenda that was outlined by Chairman Knight to talk about an overview of DOA. Department of Administration is largely the wholesale provider of services to all the other different state agencies. And what that means is that we have responsibility for providing the basic glue that holds these agencies together. And what I mean by that is it's everything from IT to HR to purchases and managing the overall state budget and the budget within each of these agencies. It affects essentially all agencies in state government. As such, it's a vital service that we provide. It essentially keeps the government running and provides the infrastructure on which we operate, the platform for day-to-day operations. It also provides planning, personnel, and we manage the state employee union contracts as well. So it's very broad, and it touches virtually every state agency. There's approximately, there's 12 divisions, and there's approximately 647, 648 authorized FTEs. We've got some vacancies that we'll be filling, including Deputy Director and Chief of Staff in the Director's Office. But each one of these different divisions I will be going over in a little bit more detail. But it includes Capital Asset Management, the Central Business Office, Diversity and Equity, Energy Resources, Accounts and Control, the Health Insurance Exchange, Human Resources, Budget, Purchases, Planning, Legal, and DoIT, IT. So let's take a quick look at each one of these. I was recounting to Chairman Knight the other day that the first phone call I made when I got here was to BJ about IT, because IT affects everyone in government. And it really is the only way that the government is going to become more efficient. I don't believe it's going to be by adding a lot more people. And it's spotty here in state government. We have some challenges. We're all familiar with state projects, IT projects that were oversold and underdelivered, but there are some very basic functions that we're not fulfilling right now that really desperately need to be addressed, primarily relating to the HR system. Purchases just started a new system, Ocean State Procures, which is showing promise, but is in the very early stages. And we also need it for our HR management, where we're still operating on handwritten, paper-based timesheets, which has proven to be quite a challenge in the pandemic era of remote work. So IT needs to address those issues. In terms of human resources, we want to make the state government an employer of choice. And what we want to try to do is make it a very inviting place to work that promises challenge, fair compensation, and high-skilled people who can run the systems that we need to make our government more effective. We need to modernize our state recruitment and hiring practices, and we're looking to ensure that our diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are implemented and we can report on that more effectively. I also want to talk about division of purchases. During the pandemic, we've had expedited purchasing that has been of some concern to me, and I want to make sure that as we move into the next phase of the pandemic, that we move back to a more systematic approach that's announced in advance and is in keeping with protecting our taxpayers and our citizens with the best value that we can provide, and provide an equal playing field for the vendors. I feel that this is important. In a time of pandemic, certainly emergency procurement has to take place, but as we have moved away from the most urgent needs, we also need to move back to the center lane and trying to make sure that we employ our policies. And to do so, we're employing, to a greater degree, our systematic approach through Ocean State Procures, which is the new system.
Rep. Newberry has a question, if you have a moment.
Yes, please. I don't hear anything. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. He's figuring it out. Did we lose is your signal choppy over there?
No, I got it. I was looking for the unmute button because I couldn't find it. I know it sounds ridiculous.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I have a generalized question. This may be the spot in the presentation to ask it, or it may not.
Right.
But there may be another spot, maybe more suited. So you can reserve the question if you want. But in my legal practice, I represent from time to time. I'm going to be very generalized here. Private companies that do business with the state, and one piece of it. And I often found it challenging to figure out who they deal with when it comes to purchasing. I know the division of purchases, but sometimes they work through other agencies. I'm curious about the efficiency there because I've seen it change over the years, and I have the sense, and I might be wrong, that it could be more streamlined or more clear as to who they're supposed to deal with. Because I only get involved if there's dispute, obviously, but does that question make sense to you?
It does, Rep. It does, because I think that particularly over the last year or so, as we've been in a pandemic mode, the procurement process is not the way that I think it should be going forward, which is, as I mentioned, when you're in an emergency situation, you need emergency purchasing. One of the challenges associated with procurement is the timing required to employ a systematic approach where you are trying to have fairness as a goal. That becomes a challenge because fairness takes time and the systematic approach takes time, and we want to have a system that works for the people and not the other way around. So in terms of the people, there's a whole team of individuals that work in purchases under Nancy Mcintyre, who heads the group. And actually, as the Director of Administration, I have the ultimate responsibility as the Chief Purchasing Officer of the state. So by exception, things come up to my attention. Now, hopefully we don't get that many exceptions and things progress smoothly. But in terms of who your clients are trying to contact, I think that depends on whether they're DOT vendors or vendors under the MPA or vendors under some other type of a service or product contract. So I don't know if that was specific enough for you, but going through...
No, again, I'm trying to be, I don't want to be too, and again, there's different kinds of purchasing. I think it makes sense to have a centralized purchasing, but at the same time, you're purchasing all different kinds of products and services. And so I guess I'm curious how much of it is centralized versus there's a purchase. Are there purchasing agents, for example, at DBR or DOT that are specific to those agencies that report to you? That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, so there's been well, let's just use DOT, for example. There is a person who is a specialist in DOT who also has support, and they report to Nancy Mcintyre, who is the head of purchasing. And so yes, there are people who specialize in each individual procurement process, and it is centralized.
Okay, that's kind of what I was getting at. I just have one quick follow-up question, or it's more as an observation. And again, I only get involved in these things when there's an issue, so it may run very smoothly most of the time. I have seen over the years swings in sort of the attitude that state government takes towards vendors, either being, I think, in my view, too loose with the rules and regulations, too much of a handshake type thing, which works if the relationship's good, but also can be taken advantage of by either side, versus the opposite, which is trying to put so many strictures to protect the taxpayer that it makes it unworkable. I'm not asking, I'm just making that observation. My recent observations, this is pre-pandemic, so we're talking 2019 maybe, okay? But my recent observations is that swinging towards the too strict, making it hard to comply and do business. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, so that's the comment I made about we need to have systems, as a systematic approach, known in advance, so that people can view and have confidence in a process that is fair. But while we need to have systems, they need to be systems that work for work for everyone instead of the other way around where everybody's working for the system. So you need to have a process by which it's known in advance and everybody knows what to expect and what is expected. I think that's the best way to approach that. So that's a way of saying you don't want to be so unreasonable in your, or strict in your process that it prevents the best interests of the taxpayers and the citizens by being too restrictive. By the same token, we're not going to have a situation where we're handing out contracts as favors. That destroys confidence in the system.
I agree. I'm just making the observation. I've seen the pendulum swing both ways. And right now I think it's swinging towards too strict. I'm just pointing that out, that's all. Which is better than too loose, but not perfect.
Well, if you have a particular situation, I am more than happy to discuss it with you. I've already been involved in a number of discussions about purchases and contracting.
I'll just leave this observation. It's more specific contract terms tend to be unrealistic. And it's not unique to Rhode Island state government. I see in municipal governments in multiple states, you know, with contract terms that just aren't really, you can't really follow them as a practical matter. That's all.
Right. Okay. I'm with you on that one.
Thank you.
Director, Chair Williams has one for us.
I want to know if it's appropriate. There was a couple of questions that I had relating to the org chart, but also following up on Representative Newberry's concern, and that with going behind Representative Newberry, the purchasing delay has been a broken system for many individuals of color getting responses or attended to, and it appears to relate to what Representative Newberry mentioned with regards to being too loose. Some folks often have that privilege of getting their things immediately, and then you have others that are still waiting to date. So you said Nancy Mcintyre is the person pretty much in charge of that department?
That's correct.
So how long has she been in play?
I'm sorry?
And so how long has she been in that position?
Not exactly sure how long she's been in that position, but I know it's been longer than 6 years because she was there when I was at HSRI 6 years ago.
Okay.
So she is quite experienced.
Maybe, no doubt, but we still have a problem, and we've been having that same problem for more than 6 years. So I just wanted to kind of get a sense of, okay, who are in the driver's seats here? And the org chart just gives the titles, but it doesn't give whom. And I'd like to put that title with the face. If we're talking about transparency, I'm terrible with names and titles. So if you give me a name and then I get a picture of that person or I meet that person, then I can relate the two with them. So that would be helpful for me.
Chair, I want to just interject here that, and this might be helpful to you, is that I'm going to ask the department to provide a larger breakdown of the organization chart with some names attached to the titles. And I understand that it's a little more in depth for just the presentation we're doing today, but if you could forward that to us, that would be great. Additionally, I think for both Rep. Newberry and Chair Williams, the beauty of this committee is that we can do a whole meeting just on purchasing someday. And
Sure.
I'm putting together a running list, because that's the point, right? This committee is like to dig in and get to all the boring sort of government nuts and bolts stuff. And really sort of, I am super interested as a chair in how we go from, for instance, with purchasing is a good example, how we go from A to Z and all the points in between, because just like Rep. Newberry said, sometimes things are too loose, sometimes things are too strict, and Chair, just like you're talking, sometimes people can access that, and sometimes they can't, whereas, and it's DOA's responsibility to have an open playing field, an open door for vendors, right? So I'll add that to the list of something to talk about in the future.
Diversity officer person 2. That's important. Thank you.
Okay, okay, Jim, carry it away.
All right. Shall we move on to DCAM?
Yes, please.
DCAM manages a portfolio of over 1,800 buildings and millions of feet of square footage that we are responsible for the facilities management and maintenance for. And also the fleet management, safety and security measures, and insurance and risk management. There's a lot of properties within this portfolio, and we have over $320 million worth of deferred maintenance on many of the buildings that we manage, including facilities here on the Capitol Hill campus, as well as the campus out at Pastore and others, including Zambarano, for example. So when there's a problem at any of these facilities, we are essentially the landlord and need to provide attention immediately. So this is a huge undertaking, and it's one on which I have been taking Saturday meetings to try to get arms around, because it's a vast responsibility, as I mentioned. Also is another vast responsibility is the Office of Management and Budget, which is headed by Jonathan Womer. I think most of you know Mr. Womer. I should give you some assurance that although the budget was delivered on the 11th of March and I started this position on the 2nd of March, the governor was involved in budget briefings for at least a month before that the budget was delivered, and I think it was closer to 6 weeks. And I too was part of that while I was with the Department of Revenue. But the top priority now is working through the FY22 budget cycle and hearings, and making sure that there's a thorough review and approval of the spending requests and coordination with regulations, and making sure that we comply with the provisions of the American Recovery program, American Rescue Plan, I'm sorry. Moving along, because I want to make sure I leave enough time for questions at the end, and we're about halfway through here. The Office of Accounts and Control is the backbone of accounting and financial integrity here at the state, and they're the official record of all financial transactions. There again, we have a situation where there has been an audit finding for probably 5 years, I think, relating to how outdated the system is. And I can remember the system that's in place was the one that was being installed when I joined the state in 1995. So it's really quite old, and many of the folks who are holding it together know ancient programming languages, and they're starting to age out of state service. So we really need to get something in place, and quickly. The Central Business Office is the coordinating financial authority for the different divisions.
Director?
Yes.
Can we just go back to that
Certainly.
ERP thing real quick?
Yes.
There was, if I recall correctly, there was an item in the budget, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, where they were asking for a significant sum of money to start that changeover to cloud-based, I think, HR system, grant management system, something along those lines.
Right.
Where are they in that process right now?
You will see that again as part of the American Rescue Plan proposals, which I'll talk about later on in this presentation. But when I got the draft audit findings from the Auditor General, the first finding is this one. And it's the first time in reading one of these audit reports that I have seen the Auditor General use the word must, as in must replace. That's strong language for an auditor, and so we need to move forward with this. The question is how we fund it. And we're going to have answers to that before the end of the month.
Thank you.
And I'll talk more about this as we get to the back of the presentation, Mr. Chair. I was talking about the Central Business Office, which basically coordinates the accounting and budgeting and reporting for the different divisions, including making sure that expenses are allocated appropriately between grants and general revenue, and working with the procurement group and managing reporting for our coronavirus compliance. The next business division is the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Opportunity. This is one which is part of designed to support inclusive state government and a culture that values the changing demographics of Rhode Island by advancing equitable and fair opportunities for all employed and who do business with the state. The top priority of this agency right now, there's two really. One is reviewing a disparity study, which we are expected to get a briefing on later this week, which I understand has been long anticipated. So we're expecting a briefing on this later this week, and this study has been the critical path item for the implementation of a number of MBE programs. Basically, the disparity study is the document which provides the legal platform from which we can move forward with these programs. The other thing is that we've got some holes to fill. We recently had a very high-profile departure from this group. Sabina Matos, who's going to be Lieutenant Governor, came out of the ODO group, and this is headed by an acting director as well, Verna Keene. Some of you may know her. We also have Health Source Rhode Island, which is the agency which is the health insurance exchange under Obamacare. And Health Source Rhode Island has a record of being able to achieve near universal health coverage, where it's less than, I think, 3.5 or 4% of Rhode Islanders are the only ones that don't have health insurance, and that's largely because of the efforts of Health Source Rhode Island under Obamacare. And then finally, it's the Division of State Planning, which is working on a land use plan for 2050. The Office of Energy Resources, which promotes clean energy and has recently produced a report. You can look up on their website the report that discusses becoming carbon neutral by 2030. And then we have legal services, which keeps us out of trouble, making sure that we follow the law. I want to spend a few minutes, if I can, talking about DOA's priorities. Certainly, the pandemic is still with us. We have hopes with the vaccination that things are on the upswing and that our economy will get better. But there are still quite a few infections, and even though we are accelerating to the maximum extent possible our vaccination program, the pandemic management will continue to be our top priority. It's the health and safety of our citizens. My objective is to help improve the reporting so that we can improve oversight of the program and give you folks and the public a better idea as to how things are going. There is a transparency portal some of you have seen. I'm thinking that that's a lot of data that we need to try to turn into information going forward, so we can make some analysis and you can have a clearer understanding as to what's going on with the effort to manage and oversee the spending of the federal stimulus funds. Likewise, after that, I mentioned that my first call was about technology. This is a very critical need for us, especially if as we have systems that have become antiquated and old, and the people who were charged with the responsibility with running them are aging out. We'll have a few more slides on that after this one. And then I'd like to really promote the continued development of a diverse workforce and have ample opportunities for professional growth. The Disparity Study is part of a critical path toward doing that. So in terms of the enterprise application strategic plans, this will include HR, payroll, financial applications, and support applications. The idea is to reduce the number of errors that come from manual processing and being dependent on people who may or may not be here for the long term. And then we want to have expanded functionality that will improve reporting. So right now, if you ask me a question for a detailed analysis, a lot of that analysis has to be done through gathering information manually, painstakingly. So this is a problem because most of us don't expect to have to do that in today's world, but we still have a number of processes that are paper-based and require manual processing, which is nearly unthinkable these days.
Director?
Yes.
How, can I ask, I mean, this seems like the computer upgrade stuff seems like it's a no-brainer. I mean, any organization of significant size understands that it has to maintain and upgrade the IT. And I'm wondering if you have a sense of sort of the history of this priority going back. You may not, but I feel like this is one of the things that might have carried through administration to administration, or it should have.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that nobody can cut a ribbon in front of or put their name on. And it's just one of those things that as long as you have the people who can run it, nobody really thinks there's a problem. But when you have programmers who can no longer around, who program in COBOL or some ancient hieroglyphic programming language, it just becomes a list of priorities. You know, there's always something else that is needed to be done, and as long as this has worked, nobody's paid attention to it. But I can tell you that another part of the problem is that we have a history in the state of over-promising on IT projects. They cost too much, they take too long, they don't deliver what they're supposed to deliver, and everybody gets unhappy about that. And I don't blame them, because there's been some epic problems with some of our IT applications. But this is something that's so basic to our operation and operational need that it really has to be done, because we're in a situation where we can have single points of failure and security risk related to the system, and we need to have timely and accurate information and reporting. And it's just outdated. And it makes it difficult for us to attract people who have to work on basically a Model T. So it's the history of it, my understanding is it was proposed for last year and the pandemic got in the way, but this is not an insignificant investment. It can cost anywhere from $40 to $60 million, and that's a lot of money by anybody's calculation.
But it's also worth noting, I think, and stop me if I'm telling a fib here, but I don't think I am, that some of the stuff that you're looking at, these are long established software solutions employed by other states, right? I mean, payroll system is not new, and there are other states who have been using these products and using them and working out the kinks over the years. So Rhode Island, I'm not saying it's going to be without its bumps, but we're not trying to invent something out of whole cloth the way we were with UHIP.
That's right.
Yeah.
The next time you hear of any controversial issue or hiccup in state government, I want everybody to be thinking, how would technology have made this avoidable or work better? That's a question I want everybody to be asking, even taxpayers to be asking, because basically I mentioned that we're in government, which is largely the information business, and our ability to disseminate quality information for decision support is limited under the current scenario, and we really need to get better.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'd really like to just spend a few moments talking about setting a tone, because I heard that message early in this presentation, before I got started on the presentation. I want to just walk through best practices. Many of the professionals here in the Department of Administration, and indeed throughout state government, have professional certifications, degrees, all of which require or mandate ethical practices as part of qualifying for that honor. That being said, I thought long and hard about the question you asked about best practices, and I wanted to set a tone that I thought was appropriate with this committee, and indeed with the Assembly to the extent that I can. It's basically, I just wanted to lay out a statement of practical principles for good governance. And the first, of course, is that in the Department of Administration, we want to, at all times, obey and enforce the law. That's really our role, is to administer the law as it's legislated by the General Assembly and enacted, and to follow the regulations and policies that are in place to the best of our abilities, without favor and without regard to exception. While we do need to make exceptions at times, we are first and foremost here to enforce the laws, obey the laws, and implement the regulations and policies. The next point is that I believe we all need to behave ethically, and the principles of integrity, honesty, and transparency is something that I put forward in the first email I sent out to all of the employees of the Department of Administration when I first started about a month ago. This is something that we will not tolerate fraud or dishonesty. That's a basic principle. We are going to work towards consensus, equity, and inclusion. This is one in which we are not as concerned about taking credit as we are about getting things done and being fair and inclusive toward and open to other ideas. We're going to perform and be accountable. That is, we're going to work hard. Everybody here is going to work hard, and we're going to be accountable for what we do. So if you have an issue or a problem with something that's being done, I'm sure I'll hear from you, but I want to hear from you because we want to correct it. I want to communicate and be accessible and responsive to you. I think that I have a reputation for being responsive. I'm going to keep that to the extent that I can. Demands are quite high here, but I know that people, whether it's a citizen or a legislator, we work for the citizens, and the legislators represent the citizens, so we need to be responsive. And finally, we need to respect others' views and be open to change. It's really quite simple to me, but it is something that I aspire to, which is something my mom told me, which is try to treat people the way you would want to be treated. And that's the way I look at things, and when we don't do that, that's a problem. That's generally when we get into a problem. If we all did that, I think we'd all get along a lot better. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to leave the last 15 minutes or so for Q&A.
Well, I appreciate the presentation. It is a huge agency, right? This is only scratching the surface, and we'll certainly dig in with some of those departments in the coming weeks and months. But the thing that I always want to put forward with this committee is a question of how can the Assembly, political animal that it is, and I know it operates on an entirely different wavelength than the administration sort of the nuts and bolts day-to-day operation of government. But how can the Assembly be of service in helping DOA and its constituent components do better for the people of Rhode Island? I'm hearing loud and clear that we have to, when you come to us with a request around that ERP platform, that we have to take it seriously. Is there anything else that we can do to help you out?
Well, yes, actually, Mr. Chair, that there are a number of things. One is that there are pieces of legislation out there that are going around, and we often comment on them. And we can advocate for or have concerns about legislation. We will let you know. That's true not only of DOA, but of other agencies here in the state government. And we're also interested in regulations, but I think that that the best way for us to help each other is to just remain in communication and communicate about these issues as they come up.
Oh, that's wise words for sure, and I agree with you. Rep. Speakman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director. That was great. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, thanks. I appreciate the presentation, but was struck by the fact, and I know this was not your mission, that statewide planning and Office of Energy Resources received no detailed attention from you. And again, I know that wasn't your mandate, but to me, those two functions, energy policy and planning, which includes housing, really don't belong in your agency, with all due respect. I guess as your great administrator, but those are policy, those are departments that if I were, the boss of things, I would pull them out of your agency and set them up alone, because they are different kinds of entities than personnel and purchasing. So I think that's something that we need to think about, and I would need to go back and look at the history. I know they used to be separate agencies and have been subsumed into Department of Administration, presumably for efficiency reasons. But to me, the fact that they were sort of just stuck into your proposal is an indication that that's probably a bad fit. I don't know if you have any comments on that, but I know you've only been in the job for a couple minutes. So, thanks.
The only comment I would say is that I have met with each of these different division heads. And they were actually pulled out of other divisions, I believe, to give them a separate platform. So that gives them more visibility. For example, the Office of Energy and Planning might actually be put together in other circumstances. But in this particular case, because energy is such an important part of the state's future, it was pulled out separately.
I have a feeling, Director, just to interject, that with the Act on Climate Bill, assuming that it becomes law, that OER is going to quickly become a cabinet level office, just because they're going to have their finger in just about every pie there is, and housing too. And this is going to be a challenge for whoever the governor is for the next, the current governor to whoever is going to succeed him down the road, whenever that is. But that is something to think about. It's there, by fits and starts, the changeover to energy based more on renewables and alternative sources and paying attention to carbon in a way that we haven't done before is going to elevate their position in state government, I think.
Well, and if I may, housing as well. Housing is inside of planning, which is inside of administration. And both the governor, the Senate president, and our speaker have indicated that that's a priority area. So I'm just not sure it would have, with all due respect to you, Director, the heft and the focus it needs when it's several levels down in the bureaucracy.
The challenge is that the governor has something like, how many reports does the governor have? 21? 21 direct reports. That makes it very challenging for the governor to have a separate agency, and to create more would make it even more challenging. So if we're going to talk about organization, that would be something certainly we could talk about. But in the meantime, what I'd like, if I can suggest, is a hearing to talk to these folks directly. And we can set that up for you. I think what you're going to find is between energy and planning, you're going to find some of the smartest people in state government work in these groups.
I agree with that. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for the director? All right, Director, I think I tend to be an efficient note taker, not more than a page or even half a page per meeting, and of course on this one I've got 4 pages. So thanks for that. Yeah, go ahead, Speakman.
Just one more question. What you said about the audit finding, where the auditor said must, and that caught your attention. Now, why has it taken so long then to, if you said for the past 5 years there's been this finding?
Right.
Where was the blockage to addressing this issue? And the same with the HR and the paper-based. Who said, nah, we're not going to spend the money to modernize those systems?
Because I wasn't here, I can't answer that question. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to bet some of it was the House of Representatives.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, right? Was it like deferred maintenance of buildings? You sort of defer the maintenance of your IT systems too? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we've had some pretty difficult IT projects, and I think that has made people shy.
Chair Williams.
Director, by virtue of you not being there, and for me it is an important question that certainly I believe should have an answer to, because if in fact those individuals are still there with that mindset, even though you may have a new direction that you're headed, it's just for the fact to know, what was their justification, their thinking, and who all was involved is also helpful moving forward. Just me. I'm not saying that you better come and give us that answer, but I would like to know. And also, can I get us your presentation? It was wonderful.
That was it was emailed to me, and I'll ask our administrative assistant, Mr. Millerick, to make sure it's forwarded to all the members, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I was just sent out this morning, so it's hot off the presses. If nobody else has any questions, I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Director, for. Do you have one more there, Chair?
Sorry, will we be able to get the answer to the questions? I didn't get we'll see or what have you. It was almost like open-ended.
Yes, of course, I will do that.
Thank you.
And we're taking notes, and I'm going to get together with our admin to make sure that we have some follow-up, because I certainly have some, and I know you have some as well, Chair. And I see Lynn's head agreeing with us. Hi, Lynn. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Director, I just want to say thank you for your presentation this morning. I know something about DOA. Like DOA it's like it's in the air, kind of like oxygen. Sometimes you learn a lot by osmosis, but to sit down and have someone say, "Look, this is our job. This is our customer base. These are who we serve. This is the various functions we do." It's very helpful. We're going to dig in and have a lot more conversation this year with you, but for now and for today, I certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Chairman, I thank you, and members of the committee, I thank you and encourage you to continue to engage, because I think that the more you know, the better that things will be for everybody.
All right. Do I have that concludes our business today. Do I have a motion to adjourn? And second? Done. All in favor, I'm assuming we're going to say aye. And hearing no nays, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thanks, Director.